What's that?
Don't want you to go screaming into the night because you don't want to look at all of us. Trying to imagine us.
Well, it doesn't work imagining that you're all naked, so. I'm Brad Ekstam with FASS Fuel Systems. We're based in Martinsville, Missouri, so if you're going down I-70, we're at exit 193 and down about 15 miles. And we've given tours before, we have a good crew, so if you're interested, and we're about 20 miles off 44. Well, we're in between 44 and 70, right in that V. So if you ever want to come by and see our operations, you're invited to come by. We're going to hit on what air does in fuel, and what we want to do is nail it down. Air and vapor is a fuel contaminant just like dirt and water. It's just not written about because people haven't known how to take it out for a long time. And we're able to do that. Now we're the only ones that know how to do it. Our competition doesn't. They've taken a shortcut, so now we're the only ones out there that do take air out of fuel. And that's our facility that you'd be more than welcome to come by. We actually can swing around in the back. I had an 82-foot rig that towed her home, and I could actually turn it around in the back. Just a little dancing, and you'll get it turned around. So you're invited to come down like a jiggy. It gets better when there's alcohol. So. And man, John Travolta doesn't have anything in this. So, but what we want to talk about, we can talk about fuel mileage, we can talk about horsepower, we can talk about consistent performance, but what we're really starting to hit on is that because there's so many variables of fuel mileage, we'll help increase your fuel mileage. We guarantee 0. All right, that's a big claim. But there's a solid 0.4 of a mile per gallon to be had. Again, I guarantee 0. It depends what you do with your foot and all that. So we're starting to really hit on saving injectors, especially after the meetings that we've had, some of the conversations that we've had with some of the top fuel engineers at Caterpillar, some of the people I know at Cat, and they're talking about what air does to unit injectors. And also what it does to this new common rail. And there's some trade-off between fuel mileage benefits, horsepower benefits, gains, and injector life, where it comes to the FASS fuel system. But we're really going to be hitting on saving injectors. They ain't cheap to replace, and even if they're under warranty, it depends where you break down. You know, if you break down right in front of a KW shop or something, or a Cummins or a Cat, that'd be great, but you never know where you are if you're out in the middle of Wyoming or where you are. But this is directly out. I forgot I had a cleaner. But this is directly out of Caterpillar's handbook talking about unit injectors. Fuel has a couple of jobs with a fuel injection system. Not only the cause of combustion, but it's lubricating these walls where the plunger's traveling up and down. And did anyone truck back in the 80s, 90s, 70s? You couldn't wash fuel off with lava soap and a wire wheel. Now you can dang near take it off with paper towels. Then you go get some soap, kind of clean off the residue, but you can get it off pretty good. Lubricity has gone down. Back in those days, like when we was designing the fuel system on a 444 Cummins, you had a unit injector, but these tolerances weren't as tight as they are now. The pressures weren't tight. So when we need lubricity, we don't have it. Air takes away from lubricity. It causes galling and scoring. And over a period of time of sitting there rubbing back and forth, it'll open up those tight tolerances, and instead of compressing all the fuel at the tip of the injector, you'll start having blow by. That's if it doesn't hang up in the housing. Okay? The other thing that fuel has to do is fuel creates a cushion for that plunger to come down and spring off of. Caterpillar says that you get up to 50% greater force of that plunger onto the tip when it's not full of fuel in the tip, when it's partially air. Now the other one, do we have any welders in here? Well, the guy that's gone, okay. What do you get with fuel, air, and high pressure? You get a blowtorch. acetylene torch. And that's what you'd have at times coming out of here. And Kevin Wilson introduced that to me. He's the #1 fuel engineer at CAT, talking about that coming out of the tip. You have a pre-combustion. And I used to believe that we lowered EGTs just because we advanced the timing to where it was supposed to be set. Air retards your timing. But now it has to be some of the heat coming out of the tip of the injector. Okay? So we're helping out with hydraulics is what we're doing. Anyone have air in your brake lines on their car? I know you guys are going to say, yeah, I got air in my brake lines. And a dryer too. So I don't see any sarcastic people in here. But you have air in your brake lines on your car, it's spongy. Or in a bucket, trying to raise a bucket up or a backhoe or something. Milwaukee School of Engineering is the #1 school in hydraulics in the country. They estimate that 75% of hydraulic system failures are due to air in liquid. That's what we help out. I don't know which button to push. Now this is an interesting article that we found from Chicago. When you spill a drink and it hits the ground, it splashes and it splatters. If it had no air in it, it will hit the ground and lay down. And what that has to do with the injector is imagine a plunger coming down and compressing through this bubble where the fluid is surrounding the air bubble. The fluid will actually travel through and implode into the metal surface and pull microscopic chunks of metal up over a period of time. Pitting. Kind of like a propeller on a boat. Liners, same thing. It's cavitation, implosion, different things like that. Here we go with buttons. Now, what is the purpose of fuel injection? It's right here. It's to inject a predetermined amount of fuel at a predetermined time. Now, air throws off your volume of fuel that's in the injector, and it also delays when the fuel is injected. Now, we go into these common rail, and where the common rails are, what they're doing is reducing the size of the bubble with a higher pressure, which is going to affect how much we improve horsepower and fuel mileage. We're still going to affect it, but not as much as we did like the older mechanical engines as the ones that we are now. But we're going to help out the injector life a lot more than what we did with the older mechanicals. Like a B or C model Caterpillar, we help that the injectors live, but they live so long anyways, it really doesn't matter. So we don't really preach that. It's a type of engines, what we'll preach, and different things like that. It varies from engine to engine. Air just throws off your time again. Now, you change the fuel delivery, you change the output of an engine, you know, when the fuel's injected, it has a direct relationship to the engine performance. Any gas hot rodders in here? Wow. Well, you play around with a gasoline engine or a diesel engine, and every engine has an optimum range of timing that you can work within. But once you go out of those times, the engine will start you'll start really feeling some negativity. Like you take a distributor on a gasoline engine and you retard it out of time just a little bit, it runs rough, runs hotter, fuel mileage goes down, horsepower goes down, temperature's up. That's what air does to a diesel. It's the same thing. And that's why you hear people that have the FASS on, they talk about running so much smoother. That's exactly why, because it's fired the same every time. So that's part of one of my sales pitches, very consistent. When that engine's running good now, when it has a full tank of full fuel, agitated very little, well, we keep it running like that all day long. So engine performance is not just horsepower. It's fuel mileage. It's carbon monoxide and dioxide going out. It's fuel. It's how the engine idles, the smoke, the throttle response, how it sounds, things like that. I just use this because I have ADD real bad, so it just keeps me online. So I don't go off on a tangent. So the squirrel. And, And I've already kind of covered this, but it occupies space. See, it gets. Now, what led us onto this is that we had a 444 Cummins that ran like crap most of the time. Sometimes it would run real good. And when we were going in to get it looked at, they were looking for air leaks. They were tightening fittings. Well, they found the fittings to be tight, so now they started taking out every 90 degree and putting in a mandrel. Every 90 degree is worth about 13 feet of fuel line restriction. Like Bruce said earlier, they're called eddy currents. When the fuel goes in, it creates an eddy current and turbulation and restriction. So that's why you don't want 90s. You want mandrel bends if you have to have a bend or anything. But Cummins service topic, this guy, Harold Webb at Cummins, because when they were looking for air and fuel, we told them, well, whenever we take our filter off, it's never full to the top. Well, it's supposed to be like that. Well, we talked to a guy at Cummins that showed us a service topic talking about where the air comes from. The air comes from going down the road and agitating. The specific gravity of pressure on the fuel, because pressure on the fuel helps bring it up with vacuum. Vacuum creates vapor. Hot fuel creates vapor. There's a trade-off, and I'm trying not to get ahead of myself as I do. And Bruce already hit on a little bit of this. Between Cat and Cummins, they say there's normally 3 to 10% air in fuel. They're right or wrong. It depends on when you measure it. If you measure it after it's been sitting all night, the full tank, you might find 3 to 10% air in fuel. Measure it when you have a quarter tank of hot fuel and you slap your hand on the bottom when it's boiling. Try measuring that. Now, there's a trade-off between hot fuel and cold fuel. Hot fuel holds less entrained air from sloshing, but it produces more vapor under a vacuum. Where cold fuel will produce less vapor under a vacuum and hold more entrained air from sloshing. We just like to get rid of both. But we don't get rid of the hot fuel, but what we do is get rid of the effects of hot fuel. And if you come over and see the demo stand, I can demonstrate and let you see a visual of what vapor does, how it's produced under a vacuum. And you can also hear what it does. It cavitates, and that's what takes metal and destroys it over a period of time. So we'll keep your injectors going for a longer period of time. So the injectors that you buy from Bruce, we'll make them last longer. He'll give you a 20-year warranty with our system on there. All right. Have any of you wondered why a fuel filter is not full when you take it off?
Mine's upside down, so when I take it off, it's empty.
That always goes, yeah. But have you ever wondered why? Well, what happens when we were trying to figure this out, we wondered why. And this Cummins service topic, which I'm not going to read because I can't. I just got hooked on phonics last week. So I tried to read the instructions to open it, and it was hard. But what happens, you fill a filter up and put it on. And I'm going to give you a test right here. Fill a filter up, put it on, watch how your truck will run for about the next hour to hour and a half. Over that hour and a half, what's going to happen is the center column is going to stay full inside the filter on the clean side. As the fuel passes through, the filter filters dirt back. Okay? Because dirt occupies space. While air occupies space also. So what happens is that the air filters back and it builds a void on the outside portion of the filter element, on the dirty side. As that builds a void, the fuel level drops while the center stays full. The outside drops and hits an equilibrium point. Fuel level does. Will not drop anymore. Any more air that comes in passes to the extreme top and goes to your engine. That's when you're sitting there idling and you feel that mist. On my 444, I used to have to bump the throttle just to be able to bump a dock. It'll make it so much smoother that you just ease out on the clutch, don't even touch the throttle. You're back right into the dock. But when that air surges through, that's when you feel that rough idle. And you can hear it, you can feel it. And I'll tell you what, on my 444, I can fill out my logbook on my steering wheel and read it. But this is a summary of what air does. It's inconsistent fuel flow. And what I should do is back up a little bit. All that we do by putting pure fuel to an engine is exactly what they do in a test cell. We're not trying to molecularize or strategize or any other ISs that I've heard out there. And I'm not a chemist, so I don't know. I know cetane works, but all we're doing is what they do in a test cell. Your fuel tank is up on top of the building. Yes, sir.
Does the bio?
No, you can't have one.
Oh.
He's been trying to get a fuel system all day.
Make sure you get the name right.
Okay.
The biofuel, does it more prone to air than regular fuel? And does the FASS system address any of the downsides of biofuel?
You know, the one thing that I do know about bio is it does add lubricity. That's one of the few things I do know about it. Bio, you know, there's a, what's that?
It adds what?
Lubricity.
That means it's more oily?
Yes. More, yes. A great way to put it, yes. It's more oily. So, I like that. But there's a trade-off, and it's hard because we don't have the equipment to measure the air and fuel